Hi guys, my name is Barry and welcome back to the channel. Today we celebrate the 20th anniversary of Dawn of the Dead, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake. I feel like maybe these videos aren't going to do me any good because it makes me feel really old. 2004 doesn't feel like 20 years ago, and that's when I saw Dawn of the Dead. I saw it at the cinema. I was right into my movie trailers at the time, and the only two places I watched movie trailers, you might remember them, is Apple trailers and the movielist.com. Those were the two places I went to every single day to watch movie trailers in the hopes that I get something good and I can go to the cinema to see it. And when I heard that Dawn of the Dead was getting remade, I was interested. And I was just waited for that trailer to come out, and the trailer did not disappoint because it made me want to see this movie so hard. So if you're here for the first time, guys, this is the first time you've watched an anniversary reviews video. This is how the format goes. I tell you my memories of said movie, how I come to watch the movie, how I felt about the movie, a mini review for it because it's not really a review video, and then after it, I will read out comments from you guys that I've already asked in advance of your memories of the film. And that's my favourite part of this, is sharing your memories of the film that I also have great fond memories of. This also might be a controversial video because I absolutely adored George A. Romero's 1978 classic, Dawn of the Dead, one of my favourite zombie movies of all time, and it still is one of my favourite zombie movies of all time. But I was at an age, I was only 20 at the time, I was at an age where I wanted to see horror remakes because there were some horror movies that people considered amazing that I thought that could be doing with a fresh retake. And so when they announced Dawn of the Dead as being a remake, I thought, okay, I'm interested. It's maybe not the first one I would have went to, and it wasn't the first one that they went to, Hollywood, but it was one of the first because it came out in 2004. We had a rush of horror remakes from around 2002 onwards, and so 2004 was still quite fresh at the time because it came out at the start of 2004. So I wasn't sure what we were going to get. Could we get any better than the classic 1978 Dawn of the Dead? At the time, I thought, no chance. But I will give it a chance because there's some people out there that will see there's a remake being announced for a classic horror film and they'll be like, no way, I'm not going to watch that. And I'm like, why? What is it? What's wrong with seeing a remake? Yes, it's lazy for Hollywood to do it and it's a cash grab, but at the end of the day, you get to see a different version of one of your favourite horror films. When Halloween was announced as a remake, I said to myself, ain't no way that's going to be better than the original. And it wasn't, but I still got to see a fresh take in someone else's view and vision of a film that I love so dearly. It doesn't ruin the original that a lot of people say. You've ruined Halloween. You've ruined Dawn of the Dead. No, they haven't. If you feel they've ruined your movie by making another movie, then you didn't really like the original to begin with. Because if it's that easy to ruin, then you didn't really like it, to be honest. But anyway, we got a little dark there, guys. Rest assured, if you do a remake of a film, you're not going to be able to ruin the original because the original is still there, intact, for you to love forever. So when the remake got announced, I was excited, and I think those of you who are not even horror fans got really excited when you saw the trailer. I think I remember the trailer being one of the most watched trailers of 2004 at the time, of course, in March or February, and everybody loved the look of it because for those who loved the original Dawn of the Dead, they were surprised as to how good it looked with the running zombies because we weren't expecting that. And then for those of the casual fans, they're like, oh, that looks like an interesting horror film. Don't know what it's about, but it looks really interesting. And one of the most interesting points for me was the running zombie. We didn't really get that until 2002 with Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later. And even back then, 28 Days Later came out in 2002 here in the UK. And Americans didn't really get that movie till 2003, 2004. And in fact, when they watched the trailer for Dawn of the Dead, they probably thought, oh, this is the very first movie featuring a running zombie. And they wouldn't be wrong in their own mind because they hadn't seen much of 28 Days Later. So the running zombie was a new concept for a lot of people. So watching the trailer and seeing running zombies in a film that we think shouldn't work it looks like it's going to work. It turns out I wasn't wrong that everybody was so interested in this. I remember going to the cinema to see this, and the line for the queue was all the way around the corner. I went to a cinema in Glasgow city centre, which is, and it's got a Guinness World Record plaque in the hall. It's the tallest cinema in the world. I don't know if it still is, but it was at the time. But it's the tallest cinema in the world, and this cinema was packed to see Dawn of the Dead. There's only one other movie that was that packed that I went to see, and it was The Dark Knight in 2008. But Dawn of the Dead, the queue went all the way around the corner, full of fans of the original and people who weren't fans at all that just thought the movie looked great. Went to see it, packed room, not a seat available in the audience. People laughed, people screamed, people cheered, and you don't get that in a UK cinema. We're more reserved. We sit and watch the movie quietly, whereas I know a lot of people in America, they jump up out and scream and clap and stuff. We don't do that in the UK. We didn't do it in Dawn of the Dead, but we did get a few cheers, a few screams, and it's a great experience. So it's an experience that I'll never forget because it was a unique experience for me at the time, going to see a film that people were getting involved in the cinema. It was great. Back when the movie did come out, at the time you had to wait at least 6 months for the film to come out on DVD because I didn't buy VHS at this point. So I waited for the film to come out on DVD. I bought it straight away on DVD, and 20-year-old me popped the DVD in and watched that film constantly because we didn't have a large selection, we didn't have online streaming, Netflix, etc. So we had to watch what we had, and I had DVDs, and Dawn of the Dead was one of my best ones, so I watched it constantly. So I know absolutely everything about the movie, probably know all the lines, I know all the actors, the years the actors were born, etc. So this movie is ingrained in my brain, and I have to say, guys, and this is where the controversy starts, I like Dawn of the Dead 2004 more than George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. When I skimmed through some of your comments, I'm not the only person that thinks this as well. Some other people also say that they like the remake more than the original, but we'll go into that later. But yes, I think that this movie is better than the original film. It doesn't mean I automatically don't like the original movie, because some people think that. You either like one and then you have to hate the other. Nope, that's not how it works. I love the original, but I just love the remake that little bit more. And I didn't know who Zack Snyder was at the time because he didn't do 300 at the time. He didn't do Watchmen, didn't do the Justice League or anything like that. He was just Zack Snyder, known for Dawn of the Dead, and that was it. And most people don't know who the director is anyway, and I didn't know who he was at the time. It's not just the running zombie that made me like this over the original. It was more the claustrophobia in terms of being in that shopping centre. It's got all the same beats as the original, but there's just something about the remake that was more visceral and made you feel like you're on the edge of your seat most of the movie. Obviously, the scenes where they go into the big lorries that are armoured up to try and get away from the shopping centre, it's so good. Then you've got Andy across the road who's in the gun shop and he's stuck on the roof, etc. There's just so much more to me that's happening in this movie than we see in the original. So there's just so many reasons why I love this new Dawn of the Dead over the original. Even though the film is already 20 years old and I love the film so much, I don't have a nostalgic feeling to this remake yet, and it doesn't mean I won't have in the future, but 20 years to me seems like a long time, but 2004 itself just doesn't seem long enough. I don't feel like I've got that nostalgia. So if somebody says, oh, where were you when Dawn of the Dead came out? I would be like, well, it was just a few years ago, so I remember it all. And I do. I remember absolutely everything about going to see it, the day I went to see it, the clothes I was wearing, the card that I had in my hand showing the cinema staff. So everything about that day, I still remember like it was yesterday. So I don't have a nostalgic connection to it. However, it's been 20 years. Where has 20 years gone? Now, there's people younger than me that will maybe have a bit of nostalgia towards it because 20 years ago to them might be a distant memory. You might have a 30-year-old that was only 10 at the time, so they have that memory where, oh, I was so young when I saw that, and these are my memories. And that's what I'm looking forward to reading in your comments. Now, I'm going to go into the comments now, and I do mention this all the time, guys. I can't read all the comments out. There's too many. There are some that I have read personally that I won't be reading out because they're either too long or too personal. So I'm going to select a few out and then we can discuss those. So the first comment comes from Richard Daniel Piro. Richard said, I seen it in a theatre and enjoyed it, and I own it on DVD. The Preacher on TV, he was in the original, which I own on DVD. Yeah, that is Ken Foree, who is in the original, and he played a cameo in the remake.
When there is no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Ian Cox said, at first I liked parts of it, but thought it got a bit bogged down in the mall, and finally got good again at the end. But the very end on the island was disappointing. Watching it again, I liked it more. Not a great movie, but it is one of the best horror remakes for sure. And there has been some stinker remakes. Yeah, of course, there's been some stinking remakes. And it is definitely one of the better remakes. One of the best remakes, I think, anyway, in recent times. When you said, though, that when it went to the end with the island, it got disappointing, but the island part wasn't really prominent in the movie. It was literally the very end of the film, and I think we saw more of the island at the end credits than we did in the actual movie. But again, that's just your opinion. Blake the sequel said, I saw it on opening night. The theatre was packed. Mine too. It was an amazing experience. I literally screamed when the chainsaw went through Monica on the bus. Oh yeah, that was a great scene. Maybe you were in my cinema because my cinema was packed and people were screaming. Jamie Wilshaw said, Channel 4 in the UK showed the first 10 minutes of it before it went to cinema. I just loved the pace and the feeling of panic about it. I'd forgotten that it was a Zack Snyder film. For some reason, they did the same with a couple of films. I remember Alien vs Predator Requiem being one. I remember that, Jamie, because obviously I've got Channel 4 in the UK as well. I remember that they showed the first 10 minutes of it, but I didn't watch it intentionally because I didn't want to see the first 10 minutes of the movie. If it was a film that I didn't care about, I would maybe watch the first 10 minutes. But because I was so excited for this, I didn't want to see any of it. I think the trailer was enough to intrigue me. I just didn't want to watch the first 10 minutes. David Ethery said, I remember reading all about this film while it was in development, and I was very skeptical and nervous about a remake of Dawn, especially after hearing it would include Zombie Baby. However, the experience in the theatre blew me away. I had a total blast with the mix of characters, the gore, and it felt like James Gunn's script and Zack Snyder's direction were the perfect pairing to modernise the Romero classic. Running zombies aren't my favourite, but this film found a way to make it all work. I found myself back in the theatre the very next day for round 2. It was the perfect film for 21-year-old Davey. I just have one question. When is the Snyder Cut getting released? How great would that be, a Snyder Cut? Well, there is a director's cut of Dawn of the Dead, so technically there already is a Snyder Cut of Dawn of the Dead, but I had the same experience with you, Davey. I went into the film thinking, okay, I need to be cautious about this one, but I was blown away. And I can see why some people won't like the running zombie because it removes that element of being able to sneak away, because the zombies will just catch you anyway. So yeah, I can understand that element, but I think, like you said, they did capture the running zombie very well. And I think there have been other zombie movies out there after this one that have got the running zombie that just didn't quite capture the way that they did with Dawn of the Dead. Matt Kirby said, the opening scene had me on the edge of my seat. I was never more tense watching someone grab car keys and climb out of a bathroom window. Truly chilling stuff. Yeah, that first scene was great. Seeing the little girl get into the house after you know who she is. She's a neighbour and she goes into the house and wakes the couple up. And I was like, whoa, that is unbelievable. And if I watched the first 10 minutes of this on TV, it wouldn't have the same impact on me as it did when I watched it for the first time in the cinema, because I remember in the trailer, I thought that was their kid. It made it look like it was their child, but it turns out it was just the neighbour kid. Shiv Gorgie said, saw it twice on release as the original Dawn is one of my favourite films. This blew me away. Such an amazing remake with great set pieces and phenomenal directing skills by the master Zack Snyder. And yeah, I would consider him a master of his trade at this point, and I thought he was going to go on to do other great horror movies. It just didn't quite work out that way. He wanted to dabble his hand in comic books. Andrew Hoekstra said, I remember them showing the first 15 minutes on cable right before its release. I was so pumped to see it. It was the first film that got me into the zombie subgenre. And there you go. I mean, 2004, people are being introduced to the zombie subgenre, whereas for me and for other people it's different eras. I get into it from Dawn of the Dead, ironically enough. The 1978 Dawn of the Dead, I got into it in the the mid 90s. But I think the first zombie film that I loved was The Midnight Hour from 1985. It wasn't a zombie movie, it just had a movie featuring zombies. But of course, the pinnacle for me when I was a kid was watching Michael Jackson's Thriller, because that was my gateway into horror. Mark Kimberly said, I'm a big fan of the original, but I was pleased by how good the remake was. I really enjoyed it. One of the better remakes to come out of Hollywood. And I think a lot of people agree with you, Mark, because there's been a lot of people that said that. It is one of the better remakes, especially in the horror genre. It's one of the better horror remakes that we've had. John Ball said, Geesh. I like it when people spell out their feelings. Geesh, being from Western PA, I was a zombie fan before, but this movie brought zombies to the forefront again. I was in college for this one, and I remember in the USA Network showing the first few minutes as a sneak peek, same as us in the UK. Well, it did the trick. I saw it twice in theatres, and the crowd was big both times. I had so many acquaintances tell other people if this happened, they would make a beeline for my apartment because of my marksmanship capabilities. So, John, I think you're like Andy then. You're the guy across the road with the sniper rifle. I'm coming to yours. Mark Thorpe said, I'll be honest, even though I may get slated for this, I find it more entertaining than the original OG Dawn. Let's be honest, Day is the greatest of Romero's original trilogy. Agree to disagree. Love the opening sequence. Sarah Polley is awesome, and any film that puts Johnny Cash over its credits is going to score. Well, first of all, Johnny Cash, one of my favourite artists of all time.
There's a man going around taking names.
For those of you who watch my channel, I did do a Johnny Cash karaoke that I uploaded on my channel last year. Watch it, it's quite cringy. I agree with you, Mark, that this Dawn is definitely better than the original. However, as the original trilogy is Night, Dawn and Day, I still think Dawn is better than Day, but I do know there's a lot of people who do prefer Day over Dawn and Night. Dan Walton said, was one of my favourite times on set, especially most of the cast signing my poster. It's also a great movie. I'm assuming then, Dan, you were part of the crew, maybe an extra, or maybe one of the boom mic holders or whatever, but that's pretty interesting that you were actually on set. I'll read one more comment out, guys, and it's from Ray Langlands. Ray said, such a good remake, even though I rewatched the original a lot in my childhood. First time I seen it, I remember it having a lot more of a punch than the original, and the dead were in full force. And it's the same with me. You know, I loved the original movie. It had a good punch, but when I watched Dawn of the Dead remake, it had more of a gut punch. A lot more feelings I had for the characters as well. And I'm sure you agree, Ray. I think the characters in this one felt more realistic and you could latch onto them more. So when something happened to them or they died, then it was more of a gut punch, if that's what you mean. It had more of a punch to the movie than the original did. So I totally agree, Ray. I don't know if that means you like the original less or more, because some people feel like the original was better, but the remake had more of an impact on them, and I can see that. But for me, it was both. The remake had more of a gut punch and it was better. So that's all the comments I'm going to read out, guys. Apologies if I hadn't read out your comment, and I say this in every video, that I do read all the comments and I love all the comments. So it's great that you're still leaving the comments, guys, way more than you have done before. When I started this out, I didn't get as much comments. The most I've ever had is for the Burbs, so I'm guessing that's the most popular one. But got a lot of comments in Dawn, which is fantastic. Got to read some of them out and read your memories, and I absolutely loved your memories. One thing that I do love, and it's very interesting, is your memories for a movie that I have are very similar. And it's great because that means that we share similar opinions, we share similar views on the movies that we love and cherish over the years, and it's no different than you have with Dawn of the Dead. So it's great reading all the comments out. I absolutely appreciate every single one of them. So that's all we've got time for today, guys. If you haven't left a comment, you can still leave a comment down below and tell us your memories. We'll be reading them anyway. It doesn't matter. So leave your comments down below, guys. Let me know what you think of the film, and let me know your memories of Dawn of the Dead from 2004. And as always, thanks a lot for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you soon.
Meeting adjourned.
Be right back. What are Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played Skin the Cat?
Someone's in the back! See!